Now it's time for an in-conversation session on the subject of making equality a reality. And it brings together two hard-charging women who, some might say, come from opposite ends of the spectrum. One has over 35 years of expertise and experience fighting discrimination and violence against women. She's been Jordan's permanent representative to the United Nations since 2016, and she brings a wealth of leadership insight from her varied career, which has included a stint at UNICEF and advisory roles at the World Health Organization and for Jordan's King Abdullah. And as of last year, she's now the Executive Director of UN Women. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Sima Sami Bahous. And our other speaker, at just 22 years old, has already achieved a lifetime's worth of work for women and girls. Her campaign, Free Periods, which she founded at 17, persuaded the British government to provide free menstrual products in all English schools and colleges. Following the campaign's success, the Queen of England awarded her the rare honor of MBE for her services to education, making her one of the youngest people to ever receive such an award. Her book, Make It Happen: How to Be an Activist, was published last year. It's so great to have you with us, Amika George. Take it away.
Hi, Seema. How are you doing?
Good, Amika. How are you? All is well?
Really well, thank you. Really excited to be speaking to you today.
Yeah.
I wanted to kick off with how things are going at UN Women and how the work is moving forward in a very difficult political and economic environment.
Well, thank you, Amika, first of all, for this conversation. And also, I must say, I want to thank you for your activism. I think your work and that of your peers is what will sustain our world and what we will be looking towards and working for towards peaceful societies. So we need young people at UN Women, girls and boys, to pick up the pace towards the SDGs and to help us all to move forward. Unfortunately, SDG 5 in particular is not on track, and it may take us hundreds of years to achieve what we wanted to achieve initially when we first started. As an example, let me tell you that at the current pace of progress, it could take us up to 286 years for women to have the same legal rights and protections as men. And this is something that is very dire, and we really need to look at that together and see how we can push this forward to accelerate it as well. Parity in the workplace is also at risk. We will not achieve it for another 140 years if we continue to go with the pace that we are going. At the current pace also, in sub-Saharan Africa, for example, and Northern Africa, and even in Western Asia, there will be more women and girls living in poverty, in extreme poverty by 2030 than we have today. So, and we are globally seeing the numbers and the women who have lost their jobs being, after pandemic, being much, much higher than men, one, and two, that women in general have lost about 800 billion in income, $800 billion in income in 2020 due to the pandemic, and it will be very difficult for them to regain all this and to regain their jobs. So basically, Amika, what I would say is, yes, the world is in turmoil. Multiple crises have devastating effects on women and girls. These crises are interlinked together, and they include, again, the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, which is still with us, escalating climate change, the backlash against women's sexual and reproductive health and rights, rising food and fuel prices, as we see the protracted conflicts throughout the world, and as we see also the war in Ukraine. Now, at UN Women, we are working to ensure strong frameworks to work with governments, to help them on their work on gender equality in the context of all these crises. And we continue to do that as we go along, and as we try together to see how best we can accelerate SDGs and move forward.
That's great, and also really difficult to hear that things are moving backwards, and we like to believe that we're on a steady path to progress, but actually there's so much uncertainty and unpredictability that leads to crises, whether that's military conflict or environmental crises, that are actually pushing us back. when you're faced with this many inequalities and differences spanning regions, countries, sectors, social groups, is there a plan to prioritize? Is UN Women, choosing things to work on that need greater and more urgent support than other things? Or is it still that broad-based plan of action?
Thank you, Amika, again for a very good question, because I think what we need to be doing today, all of us, is to really prioritize what we do. At UN Women, we are prioritizing coordination within the UN system so that we ensure that everybody is working with a gender lens on all their plans and all their projects and all their objectives, and that they continue to include gender equality in their work, whether there is a humanitarian crisis like in Afghanistan, Ukraine, Ethiopia, Yemen, and everywhere else where we have crises. We feel that our role as UN Women is even more critical to ensure that gender equality and women's empowerment are central to the humanitarian response. This is one thing. The other thing is to continue to pivot toward the field and to work in the field where the lives of women and girls most matter to them and their quality of life can be improved in their own communities. We are investing now, for example, in areas such as ending violence against women, which escalated after COVID and also escalates usually in conflict. We work again to help support the care economy, which is also, it was revealed that women were the ones who were at the front lines of the care economy during COVID and in most of the crises as well. We also work with women's organizations, women's movements, because to bolster women's leadership, among many others, because women's leadership at times like this need to be bolstered and supported because they are the ones who are going to move forward on that. Also, we include, with the work that we do, a lot of work on including young people like yourself and like your peers as well. And this is why we have launched with the governments of Mexico and France, we convened the Generation Equality Forum last year, which brings about governments, civil society organizations, private sector, philanthropic actors, young people to make concrete and measurable commitments to drive impactful change in the lives of women and girls. And this is something that we feel will be carried forward by young people and by the coalitions that we have created to move this generation equality forward for the betterment of the life of women and girls worldwide.
Amazing. It's so great to hear that generation equality is moving forward, and as you say, championing that diverse remit of people from across generations. In my opinion, I think intergenerational division is one problem with the feminist movement and with a lot of gender equality efforts. A lot of the time we see fracturing between generations, between people with different socio-economic status, between different races, between different geographical regions. I wondered what you thought about that and how that can be countered, how we can make the feminist movement and all our efforts to achieve gender equality more cohesive. At the end of the day, we all believe in the same cause and we all want to see equality and make equality a reality. So how can we ensure that our efforts are joined up and that it's a cohesive and united front?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, there are many challenges facing gender equality activists and social justice movements, young and old. Today, as we can see in the slow rates of progress that I have mentioned already, we have the challenges of shrinking civic space, which also affects the feminist movement and women's movement. We see pushbacks against all activists working hard to advance women's rights and gender equality. We see the lack of funding made available for gender equality, and also we see the need for alliances and coalitions. As we know, women's civil society and feminist movements are not homogeneous, with activists working on different issues, different concerns, with a variety of approaches. But we at UN Women adopt an intergenerational, intersectional approach to young women and girls. We focus on shifting social norms, supporting policy change, fostering youth leadership, and amplifying girls' voices through effective partners and partnerships. This comprehensive approach allows us, as UN Women, to see that our work to support gender equality activists speaks to the experiences and to the needs of women and girls, and ensures their perspectives are taken seriously in policy fora. And within the UN system, we also advocate to include continuously the perspectives of youth and adolescents in everything we do. The interest groups within feminist movements, as I mentioned, are diverse. They reflect specific agendas, but I must say that the drive for gender equality is common among us all. And this is where is the springboard for us to continue to work. Having such a diversity of actors involved in the pursuit of gender equality should be seen, and we see it as enriching the outcomes and the results of our work. One thing I want to say also is that we really work with men and boys as well to ensure that positive masculinity is there, and to ensure that both men and boys are they understand the issues of gender equality, and that they are supportive of that of gender equality. I want to ask you a question, if I may, Amika. I wanted to ask, how do you see it? How do you see if we, since we are from different generations now, how do you see that we as UN Women can ensure that we are really listening to you, to your voices, and how we can amplify the voices of young women so that we also meet the needs and aspirations of the young people throughout?
It's a great question, and definitely I think one of the most pressing issues facing this sector. And I think, in my opinion, it's difficult to strike a balance between tokenistic inclusion and real genuine participation of young people. I think I kind of resent when people say young people are the future, because it's actually young people are here right now and working on the ground to make change in the present. We're all part of the present. It's not always about looking forward just to the future. So I think it needs to be genuine participation, really not just listening to young people, but acting on what they say, making sure that they have a seat at the table and that their voices are equal to those of any generation. If we're going to create a gender equal world, it has to, in my opinion, it has to take into account people of all gender identities, of all generations, and it has to be pluralistic and diverse. And there's no way to achieve that without actually including those people that we're trying to amplify and uplift. And I think a huge organization like UN Women, with so much potential for real sustainable change, should recognize that and should try and pull everyone together under the umbrella of feminism. I think we have a really vital opportunity there to create sustainable change for the SDGs. But I just wanted to say thank you so much for taking the time to speak to me and for answering my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Amika, also for this opportunity to speak to you. And I hope that we will always continue to stay in touch and to work together as well. The most important part of our work is to leverage the power and the efficiency of collective action by all, the whole of society, and all kinds of possibilities that we can access and that we can move forward. So thank you very much again for your leadership.
Thank you. I couldn't agree more.